This episode of the Creep Street Podcast is brought to you by Martini Coffee Roasters. You know, people always look at me weird when I say I start off every morning with a big old martini. But then I set them straight, and I tell them I'm talking about Martini Coffee Roasters coffee. A delicious coffee made by the Martini family. They roast their coffee using a traditional method of sight and sound to roast those little babies to perfection. And they also sell green coffee beans for those home roasters out there. And right now, fans of the Creep Street Podcast can get 20% off their entire order by using the code CREEPSTREET at martinicoffee.com. Once again, for 20% off your order, use the code CREEPSTREET at martinicoffee.com. Martini Coffee Roasters, the perfect coffee to keep you creeps caffeinated.
You've taken a wrong turn down Creep Street.
Citizens of the Milky Way, this is Maureen Bogey.
And this is Dylan Hackworth.
And you are listening to what? Huh? What is that? Yeah, that's right. It's the Creep Street Podcast.
That's right, folks. Don't turn that dial. You are exactly where you need to be.
Oh, that was actually very comforting, and thank you for the reminder.
Of course.
Now, thank you all so much for being here today. We are so happy to have you. And if you just want to be kept up on what we're doing and all that good stuff, you know what? You can follow us on all sorts of social media platforms. And I'll tell you about some of them right now. We've got Facebook at Creep Street Podcast, Twitter at Creep Street Pod, TikTok, Instagram at Creep Street Podcast. I think that's it.
Man!
No. Threads, Creep Street Podcast.
An embarrassment of riches.
Yeah. So feel free to get in there and just, get wild, get weird. Now, here's the thing. It's clinically proven that one episode a week is not enough.
Oh, no. You've tested positive for fandom. It's terminal. It is terminal.
You know what? It's chronic, but you know what? It's gonna be good though. You know what I mean?
Right.
It kind of slaps. And you know what? We've got the cure.
That's right, folks.
We've got the cure.
The doctor is in.
That's right. And you know where you can get that sweet relief? You can check that out at patreon.com/creepstreetpodcast. And we actually have a little bit of an exciting thing. We've got a new Patreon member.
Yes, we do, and we can't wait to give them a shout out at the end of the show, a new top-tier Patreon subscriber.
We are so happy to have you, and, you'll get your nickname at the end.
That's right, and we can't wait to unveil it.
Yes. Now, Dylan, last week we were talking about stickmen.
That's right. Sticks and stones. Oh,
Ooh.
Baby. It took on a whole new fucking meaning last week.
I mean, a lot of weird stuff. And thank you to everyone who has listened to that episode. I mean, what a whirlwind. What a journey. And thank you for being with us on that journey. But this week, Dylan, it seems like we have something else, a little bit of a different vibe. What are we doing today?
Ooh. Folks, I usually say buckle up before I announce the week's episode.
Of course.
But this week, you might want to literally buckle up.
Okay, what do you mean?
Because we are talking about cursed cars. Oh my God!
What the heck?
Maureen, look at... Oh my God!
Oh, whoa!
Whoa!
Ow!
Yikes! Ouch! Ow!
Yowza!
Wow!
Oh, that smarts.
Folks.
Yeah.
Listen.
Yeah.
Today's episode is a fun one, and oh my God, this is one of those where kind of like it's not anything like The Curse of the Chain Strangler in terms of content, but it is very similar in like whether this had anything to do with the supernatural or not. The coincidences are fucking insane. It's one of
really?
those
Oh, interesting.
And that's going to be the second part of our episode because, listen, I almost named the episode Haunted Cars. Cursed Cars just had more of an alliteration to it.
You just got, yeah, we love it.
But here's the thing, and we're going to differentiate, and I want to discuss it as we go.
Mm-hmm.
Can something be, and I think so, can something be haunted and just haunted, and can something be cursed and just cursed? Now, I know there's a lot of overlap, but these first batch of stories, I think you'll realize, I think more fall into the definition of a haunted car, whereas the second ones fall more into a cursed car.
Yes. Okay.
And I wanted to differentiate that up top, and we'll discuss it as we go. But boy, oh boy, let me rev your engine with my sources here.
Oh, very nice.
Got a few articles and a video here. We got one, 10 Notoriously Haunted Vehicles by Jocelyn LeBlanc at top10.com. I've noticed Jocelyn LeBlanc, she writes at Mysterious Universe sometimes.
Oh, very cool.
Speaking of which, of course, would it be Creep Street without a little dose of Brent Swanser?
We love the guy, for gosh sakes.
We need to reach out to him and get him on the show.
Yeah.
2 articles by him at Mysterious Universe. One is Ghosts in the Machine, Strange Cases of Haunted Cars, and Speed Demons, Tales of Possessed Cars. And then also a YouTube video by the YouTube channel Bedtime Stories called The Golden Eagle. Folks, this is a fun one, yet a scary one.
Yeah.
And tragic, too, especially in our later stories. Very tragic. But I've long been excited to cover this on Creep Street. And this is one of those where there will definitely probably be a Cursed Cars, too, in the future. Because, you know, stories of haunted and cursed cars are about as numerous as there are fucking cars.
I mean, there's a lot of stories. I mean, it's very common, even people I know,
And when you think about it, it makes perfect sense. If a building or a location can be haunted, if a ship can be haunted, why not a vehicle?
Yeah.
I know it's kind of confined. It's not big enough. You wouldn't think, it's kind of cramped if you're going to be a ghost.
But we always talk about in these situations with really so much of the paranormal, but especially I think with ghosts and hauntings, is this oftentimes spaces just are more fertile for it or something. I don't know. And one of the things is if you're kind of neither here nor there.
Exactly.
So it makes sense that a place like a plane, a train station, even a theater, because it's being so many different places.
Exactly.
It's
good point.
there's a lot of, that goes into it. But yeah, so a car is moving, so it's everywhere and nowhere at the same time.
Yeah, you don't think of it as being haunted.
But
you would think more of a car as being cursed rather than being haunted. But we're going to have some stories that might change your mind a little bit.
Oh, interesting.
But we're going to go over some tales, folks, that are sure to make you look in your rearview mirror. Let's say that. And at the very least, consulting your Kelly Boo book.
Oh.
Look out! Well, folks, this first story was curated from the forums over at Unsolved Mysteries. And it happened in Halifax, Nova Scotia. Maureen and I have actually been to Nova Scotia, an absolutely beautiful place.
Oh my gosh, yeah, and we've been to Halifax specifically.
Yes, and then we went to the countryside of Nova Scotia.
God.
It was gorgeous.
It is one of the most beautiful, wonderful places in the world.
Absolutely, and I know we've got listeners up there, so shout out to you folks.
Yay.
And your fine land, fine land of Nova Scotia.
Thanks for the great poutine.
Absolutely, we did have good poutine, and I went to a cool little comic book store and I bought Batman Year One, which is a dope storyline.
I also quickly want to just add that I don't really know the origins of poutine. I don't know, what city really claims to be, the poutine king of Canada. So I didn't mean to say anything controversial by saying I liked the poutine in Halifax.
Absolutely. Well, this happened to a young guy up there. He was kind of in a desperate situation. His car had finally just run till it gave out. He was in desperate need of a car. Well, a friend of his directed his attention to a possible car that might be up for grabs. The car in question was parked across the street from his friend's house. It was apparently working just fine, but for some reason, unbeknownst to them, it had just been sitting idle and unused. So the young man inquired about the car with the owners, and he was shocked at just how quickly and enthusiastically they were to part with this thing, and they did so for a very cheap price. What a lucky break, he thought to himself.
Oh, bless him. Yeah, he doesn't know. He doesn't know what's going on.
But quickly, he began to wonder about his luck. The car began to show certain signs of minor issues, like the electrical system was acting funny. His radio would turn on and off by itself.
That's so annoying.
Sometimes the speedometer would just stop for some reason. But as annoying as these problems were, they were really just minor issues. The thing still ran just fine. But things only got stranger to the point that they couldn't just be chalked up to simple electrical or maintenance issues. Here is what the witness says happened. I started ignoring it, and one day on the way home from my girlfriend's house, I heard a weird noise in the back seat. It sounded like paper crumpling up. I looked back, and nothing. I also looked around at each window, and there were none opened. I thought it might have been the wind. I then heard the same noise in between the two front seats. I looked down, and nothing. Very confused, I started trying to figure it out. Now, I was just coming to a top of a hill, and in my left ear, I heard my name whispered to me gently.
Ooh.
I immediately froze and popped my car into neutral so I could coast home. My house was at the bottom of the hill, and when I rolled into my driveway, I jumped from the car, leaving the keys behind, and crawled through a window to get into my house.
Wow.
Now, there were 3 incidents, that being first. The second incident occurred when I was driving my car to my friend's to pick up an instrument. I seen another friend of mine walking along the side of the road, so I pulled over and asked if he needed a ride. They said yes and jumped in, and I continued along the way. I arrived at my friend's whom I was getting the instrument from, and the friend I picked up said they would wait in the car, as they didn't know my other friend that well. I went in the house, and my friend started talking to me. I wasn't in there for more than a couple minutes when I heard the front door burst open, and my friend who was waiting in the car came running in, yelling for me. Now, I was quite shocked, as they didn't know my friend, and they busted in like they owned the place. They finally found me, and I asked, "What's wrong?" They said they were in my car, and they heard the sound of paper being crumpled up, and then the same noise in the front, and then the seatbelt pulled tight, and something grabbed their hair. I was absolutely shocked, as I told no one about my incident. Now, this proved there was something going on in that car, and the final incident occurred when I arrived home one night. I plopped myself on the couch and turned on the TV. I suddenly felt as if something was watching me. I slowly turned around to see a tall man in a black suit with a large brimmed hat. Their face was smudged out with no facial features, though it felt like his eyes were peering into my soul. I froze for about 30 seconds, which felt like forever, and it slowly disappeared. I rose to my feet and said out loud, "I don't want no trouble. I'm just going to bed." I was nearly scared to death. I suddenly saw the apparition appear at the base of my doorway. As I froze, it disappeared. Now, the scary thing about this story is that I realized that there's an intelligence behind these spirits and that they're conscious. And yeah, I sold the car the next day for $100 and never saw that spirit again. So almost like a faceless phantom.
Yeah.
And also, there was other articles I found about haunted cars' connection to Men in Black. But I wanted to save that. I didn't include that because I wanted to save that for maybe a future Men in Black episode, which we'll totally do.
Yes, of course.
So yeah, weird, this faceless phantom in a way. And it was in a hat, a brimmed hat. It sounds like a Men in Black.
But then also, it's so interesting. It's always with the hats. You know what I mean? It's like the Hat Man also has that hat, that brimmed hat.
Exactly.
You know? It's like, why is that? It's so interesting. And
yeah.
And I know a lot of people, and when I say people, I mean like well-respected like people, have said that it's very possible that the reason why so many people see, if they see the Hat Man or whatever, that he's wearing a hat is because of Freddy Krueger. That it's kind of just become a there's a term for it that I'm totally blanking on right now, but it's like, it's just something that everyone knows, and it's just kind of like subconsciously in you, even if you've never seen Nightmare on Elm Street.
Right, it's just kind of in the social zeitgeist.
Yeah.
Or something. Yeah, it's in the wider psyche of the populace.
Right.
So no wonder these folks wanted to get rid of that car so bad.
And it's funny, I wonder if there's something too about like you need to exchange money for it, like you couldn't just give it away.
Right.
I just wonder if that was a part of it, or maybe that's just a coincidence that he bought it and then he sold it.
That's a good question.
I don't know.
Well, this next story comes from the website Quora, which is interesting. I had never thought to look there for scary stories, but I will now. The witness is a woman named Stacy Panter who had her own run-in with a haunting pertaining to a car that she used to own. As soon as she bought this thing, she expressed a constant feeling of discomfort when she was in the car. She could never quite feel at ease. It always felt like someone was in the car with her even when she was riding alone. She would constantly think she saw something in the rearview mirror, but when she'd look back, no one there. Not only that, her friend had a car in which she was also experiencing very similar things. Here's how she explains it.
One night, a friend of mine needed to go somewhere, so I allowed him to take my car. When he returned, he was very pale and asked me why I didn't inform him my car was haunted before he left in it. I explained to him what I've just said here. He said that something very bad happened to someone in that car and felt like maybe someone had killed someone and transported them in it. I have no real evidence that anything happened in the car, but the fact that I felt that I wasn't alone when so many times I was in it. My friend owned a Jeep Cherokee with a similar story. He allowed me to drive it to visit a friend of mine after he first got it. My friend wasn't home, so I was going to write her a note. I had a pen and paper and desperately tried to write her a note and couldn't. My hands would violently shake when I tried to write. I told my friend, and when I said I was going to write her a note, he interrupted and said, "You couldn't write it, could you? You couldn't do it." I asked him how he knew, and he told me he had the same thing happen to him. He said he'd been to Walmart the week before in a neighboring town to where I live, and a lady approached him and wanted to see his vehicle. He allowed her to check it out, and she told him her husband had committed suicide in it. He'd written an extensive note. The Jeep seemed to drive itself quite a bit, and it's hard to explain. As I said, there's more of an explanation as to why the Jeep was haunted than the one I had at the time. My friend didn't keep the Jeep very long after that, though.
How interesting that this woman approached him at Walmart.
Yeah.
She could sense, just without knowing this person, that guy owns the car my husband had killed himself.
Yeah.
That's insanity. She must have seen her something relating to her husband sort of around him in his aura or something.
Yeah, I mean, I have no idea, but it's wild that this person was able to kind of experience a paranormal car situation 2 times.
Yeah.
Like being so close to it, like,
Yeah.
you know, you experience it and then, you know, your friend does. Like, that's wild.
Well, this next story was also posted to Quora, and what's specifically weird about this one is the car in question wasn't like an older car. It wasn't necessarily brand new, like brand new off the lot, but this red Toyota Corolla was relatively new, which is why the haunting that came with it was kind of a particular shock to the owner. The vehicle seemed like it wanted to get into accidents. It would also get scratches on it for no apparent reason, with no reasonable cause either. But things really hit the fan when the owner began to witness a spectral presence around it, and sometimes even inside the car. But this car had no accidents in its history, no instances of violence that took place in or around it. So why was this happening? Here's their story.
I remember one day my dad, sister, and I were driving to the library. I saw an old man get on the road as we were passing. My eyes widened and my heart came to a halt when I realized my father was not stopping the car. I nearly shouted, fully expecting to hear a thud at any moment. Nothing happened. I looked back, but there was no one on the street. "Didn't you see that guy?" I asked my father and sister. Neither of them had a clue what I was talking about. Ghost pedestrian? Who the fuck knows? What really spooks me is what I've been seeing in the car since then. Back in our old house, the kitchen overlooked a living room with large bay windows pointed straight at the driveway. Every now and then, I'd turn around and see someone's figure in the driver's seat. I'm not talking about a creepy shadow in the night either. I mean, I was doing the dishes after making lunch, and there'd be a silhouette in there. It didn't disappear when I blinked. I'd usually get distracted for a moment and look again, only to find the car was empty. This happened all the time, at least twice a month. One night, I was driving back home and I looked in the rearview mirror. You know, in those horror movies when you see a figure in the mirror. Holy shit, it happened. I very, very clearly saw a man sitting in the back seat. I turned my head, but of course, there was nothing there. I recently moved, and the car cannot be seen from any of my windows. I see the car when I get out of the bus and when I take out the trash. When I do, oftentimes I'll see a figure in there. Heck, just last week I went to the grocery store, and on my way back to the car, I got this weird feeling. I looked up, and there was someone in the driver's seat. It doesn't matter what angle the car's in either. I've seen the silhouette straight on, from the back, from the side. So what do you think? Can cars become haunted? Is my car haunted? How the heck does a car even get haunted?
Interesting.
And I mean, hey, a valid question. How does a car become haunted? We touched on that a little bit earlier with the, neither here nor there. And then also just, intense things. I mean, a lot of intense things happen in cars.
Yes, they do.
Not even just like car accidents, but like some very deep conversations are going on in cars.
A little bit of sex.
Dylan, please be appropriate.
Well, folks, this next story comes from a witness living in Canberra, Australia. This was posted to the website Your Ghost Stories, and it tells about a Ford Falcon that seemed to be under the influence of more than just a mere ghost, but by something possibly demonic. The witness bought the car in fairly good condition except for some strange stains on the upholstery that the dealer just wrote off as simple coffee stains. But weird things began to happen from the very first time they drove the car, and here's their tale.
I went to pick up my friend from his house, and we drove into the Canberra city center. We were listening to 87.6 FM, a techno radio station, pretty loudly. We started talking about the, quote, blood stains, and very shortly after, while driving, my steering wheel started to shake. I let go of the wheel, and me and my friend were watching in amazement at the event occurring. After about 10 seconds of that, my car decided it would try to ram the car next to me. At this point, I grabbed the wheel to stop the oncoming collision, and immediately after, the radio cut out with the sound of when an older TV cannot find a channel. White noise, I believe it's called. Then after about 3 seconds of white noise, the radio changed to 66.6 AM. It may sound coincidental, but in my opinion of the experience, it was not. Changing to AM radio is not just a simple change of the signal. You actually have to press a button for it. Me and my mother later found out when trying to get the car registered in Canberra that it was involved in a crash and written off. I know God was watching over me at this time, so I changed my bad ways. Or he was just protecting me from the bad spirit in the car, because after this experience, the car did not pass inspection as it was rusted. We checked the car engine, etc. before buying, and there were no signs of rust. It did not pass inspection, so we sold it back to the dealers in Sydney for a loss of $500.
I mean, it's official. If you listen to AM radio, you're a demon.
I mean, come on.
And I'm not judging you for that. It's just like that's the truth, at least in Australia.
I mean, I think you might absolutely be right.
But yeah, that is spooky, scary, and that white noise static, situation on the TV. I mean, that's scary stuff.
Very
It
scary.
is like very, and you see that a lot with that static. We've talked about that with like other paranormal things. So it's all lining up.
Absolutely. Well, a similar story was posted about on the same website by a woman named Melinda who was living in Atlanta, Georgia. She had a cross that would hang from the rearview mirror. Now, she was the only one who used the car and the only person with keys to it. Yet every day, when she would get inside the car, she would find the cross had been tossed to the floor of the car. Things would only get worse from there.
I found it to be really odd because you would need to lift the metal cross and leather string it was hanging from to get it off the mirror. About 6 months later, I found the cross wrapped around the mirror as if the car had rolled several times. It isn't possible to have this happen from driving. The cross has weight to it, and it would physically have to be lifted to wrap several times around the mirror. This time I started to get concerned about what could make this cross move like this. I moved about a year later, and the same thing happened at my new house. I considered putting up a camera to catch it on film, but I never got around to it. A year or so later, I was with my twin on vacation, and we were in her new Porsche, and we stopped for lunch, and when we came back out to the car, her cross had done the same thing. We were both taken aback, but just dismissed it. It's been about 8 months, and she just called me to tell me it happened again when the car was in her garage. At this point, I am really wondering what is going on.
Yeah. I mean, what is going on? What is actually going on? I mean, that's scary.
Very scary, folks. Creepy.
And it's just something about, I don't know. It's just I don't know. It's just, we rely on cars so much. You know what I mean? And it's just scary to think like this thing that we use all the time. Oh, God, it's scary.
It's very scary. This next story was posted to Reddit, and the witness claims to have had a car that was perhaps under the influence as well of demonic forces.
Oh, I see. Oh my gosh. I thought you were talking about alcohols.
Oh no.
We're talking about demon shit, which I love.
The car had been purchased new, so there was no dark history behind it.
Well,
the car began to brake on its own, usually at the worst of times. Sometimes it would speed up or slow down all on its own, narrowly getting her into accidents. And what's even creepier was that on the passenger side, mysterious handprints began to show up on the inside of the windshield. She began to hear what sounded like water dripping and sloshing around inside the car. Once when she took the car to be inspected by a mechanic, he was shocked to find water pouring out of the glove compartment. It doesn't stop there. One day, the car had gotten infested with ants out of the blue. She eventually confided in a friend about what was happening, and this is what happened next.
He thinks my car is haunted. With all the handprints, the sudden automatic braking system, the water, and the insects, he even brought up a dream I told him about a year ago, which I regret telling him now because he's so sure that a ghost is in my car. The dream is about me and a friend who is a girl, who I know now as my new classmate, whom I met in January, and now I'm giving her a ride home. I asked my friend who's getting beside me in the car where we should go next, and she tells me that we could hang out at her apartment. A little girl behind us suddenly spoke up, and I looked at her. I saw her eyes turn dark as night, and she grinned at me. "I wouldn't do that if I were you," she said in a playful voice, and I glared at her before snapping. "And why not?" The demon girl just leaned her head on my friend's shoulder and told me, "Because a demon is obsessed with you, and if you're not home in a couple of days, he'll be mad." That's when I woke up. I only got my car last January as an early gift, and I only met my friend last February. The dream happened last year in September. I'm just looking for a good explanation for all of this because I drive home alone now after my internship ends by 11 p.m., and I seriously don't want to imagine a ghost or whatever invisible thing is sitting beside me in the dark.
Yeah, I mean, I don't blame you. I don't blame you there. And the kid, it's always a dang kid out here being spooky.
Crazy.
Always. But yeah, I totally understand why you would be scared and want to not drive home alone by yourself at night.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I don't really have a solution for you, but I wish you well.
Yeah. Now, it should be known that not all car hauntings are committed by evil spirits. Some appear to actually be benevolent.
That's great.
And someone posted a story to Cora, and they had an interesting story, and this one's a quicker one.
When you hopped into this car, you felt at home, happy, at peace. We had Bessie for 12 years, and she was a station wagon who loved to travel. My father said he could feel her take over the steering if there was heavy traffic. She kept us safe. She avoided animals safely. Bessie was a perfect lady. She never leaked oil or lost her cool. You could push on the accelerator all you wanted. Bessie kept to the speed limit. The day she stopped and wouldn't move, turned out the boat trailer was loose on the back coupling. My father had time to fix the problem and save a highway disaster.
So, this is a car that wanted to take care of people.
I mean, I really love that, and it really reminds me of a lot of things. But one thing is like almost like a pet in a way. You know what I mean? How it's like it's with you for so long, and then it just it's unfortunately not there forever, and it just at one point that's that, and but then at the same time it's like it's like a nanny.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just a lovely nanny.
Now let's take a step back, and we're gonna look at tales of cursed cars throughout history. Now these cars are the cursed ones.
Yeah.
One of, if not the first, haunted car story dates back to when cars were a very new thing. Going back to the days leading up to World War I, the Austrian company, the Graf and Stift Company, was celebrated for its automobiles, producing some of Austria's very first cars. The three Graf brothers and their partner, Joseph Stift, had formed the company, making bicycles back in 1897. Well, by the year 1914, they had become world-renowned for their luxury cars that were sought after by wealthy folks around the world. One of these folks, these prestigious folks, happened to be none other than the Austrian Archduke himself, Franz Ferdinand.
Oh, shit.
Folks, let me just preface this. As always, I'm about to take some incredible, complex, fascinating history and squeeze it down for our purposes into a few paragraphs. So forgive me if I get anything wrong, but I think I got the gist of it here. Because this is so, I know obviously because I studied World War I and stuff at school, so I had learned about this, but I had never had it laid out in this way. I think I'd listened to like Dan Carlin's podcast. He did a special on World War I, and it really put it into perspective, how this thing actually happened, this fateful day.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in 1914, the Austrian royal family ordered one of these top-of-the-line vehicles. The car was a large four-cylinder limousine with an open top that could seat 6. It was known as the Graf and Stift Double Phaeton. It was in this very vehicle in which Ferdinand and his wife Sophie were assassinated. The royal couple arrived in Sarajevo by train. Their car was on one of the train cars. And obviously, tensions in that part of the world were very high, as World War I was about to break out, of course. Now, the day in question was June 28th, 1914. Now, the Archduke and his wife were assassinated by a young man named Gavrilo Princip. And here's how it happened. From what I understand, there was 5 assassins in total, and they were stationed at different parts along the route that the royal motorcade was going to be coming through. The first assassin had his chance and apparently got cold feet. 2 other assassins later down the line threw a grenade at the car, but this grenade had a 10-second delay on it. So the car that the Archduke and his wife were in sped up, avoiding the blast. It actually hit one of the other cars in the motorcade, causing severe injuries to the people in there.
So they continued the motorcade after that?
Well, here's the thing. When the Archduke's car goes speeding off, Princip and the other assassins can't keep up to it. They can't catch it to do what they were charged to do.
Yeah.
And this, from what I understand, was devastating for Princip. He felt like he had let himself down. He had let down the cause. So distraught and feeling such a sense of shame, he goes to a local cafe to sort of wallow in his despair. Well, now, obviously, this motorcade is all distraught. And the Archduke and his wife, their driver, they changed their destination. They were now traveling to the local hospital to visit those in their motorcade that had just been injured in this blast.
Of course.
When wouldn't you know it, their car happened to stall right at a crosswalk, right in front of the very cafe where Princip was.
That's insane.
Think about that.
That is so crazy.
So you're in this city. These assassins try to kill you. You get away. The assassin, one of the assassins at least, is like, oh my God, he's so bummed.
Yeah.
And he goes to some local cafe to just sort of be alone, to kind of wallow in his shame.
Yeah.
When the Archduke's car happens to then stall in front of the very cafe you went inside of.
Oh, it's absolutely wild.
Princip stepped outside of the cafe and riddled the Archduke and his wife with several shots.
Oof.
Their deaths obviously kick-started World War I.
Yeah.
So like I said, that's a lot of incredible history that I've squeezed down into one. I think I got the storyline straight, but it's incredible, stuff.
I mean, that is so... I cannot believe that Franz Ferdinand's car stalled outside the cafe
Yeah.
that Princip just happened to be in. Like, wow. It makes you wonder, like...
Yeah.
Was there some grander reason? But
Yeah.
I mean, World War I was, horrifying. So,
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, that is a 1,000,000,001 chance it would stall right in front
Yeah.
of the cafe he went to.
Oh, crazy.
So the story about this car was not yet over, though. The first to get the car after the royal family was killed inside of it was an Austrian general by the name of Potiorek. Now, many say he was driven mad by the vehicle by simply driving it, living out the rest of his years in an asylum. The car then was owned next by a German military officer. One day, this military officer is driving along in the car when all of a sudden, two peasants, that's what my source says, peasants, just two people, happen to step out into the street in front of his car. He swerved to miss them, and by doing so, accidentally crashed into a tree, killing him. And what's more was he wasn't even able to avoid those two folks. Both of them were hit and killed by the car.
Oh my gosh.
In an instant, 3 dead.
Wow.
The next owner, while my source isn't really clear who the person was, apparently committed suicide not long after buying the car. And then the car came under the ownership of the governor of what was then Yugoslavia. Not long after coming into ownership of the vehicle, he was involved in 4 separate accidents, one of which he lost an arm in.
Oh my God.
It's said that the governor would often rant about how the car itself was cursed. He finally convinced an acquaintance of his, a surgeon, to buy the car off of him. And the surgeon was skeptical of all this hogwash about curses,
Oh, brother.
So all the weirdness must have stopped there, huh? Wrong.
Oh,
The surgeon himself was killed when the car rolled over and he was crushed beneath it.
wow. Okay. Wow.
Next, the car was bought by a Swiss race car driver. He died in a very similar way when the car rolled over several times during an accident, crushing him. Even despite the body count, another buyer was lined up to take the car. The car was being towed to him, and he was killed when the car mysteriously broke free from its restraints on the tow, falling on him and crushing him before he even had a chance to drive it. Oh, but it keeps going. The next owner was a Romanian man. One day, when driving the car to a wedding, he inexplicably lost control of the car, leading to a crash that killed him and 5 others who were in the car with him. In just a 12-year span, the car was the cause of 13 deaths. Or at least deaths in and around it, like the Archduke and his wife weren't killed by the car, but you know what I mean.
Right, yeah. Wow, 13.
In 1926, the car finally came under the ownership of the War History Museum of Vienna, and it has remained off the road ever since.
Yeah, I think that's probably for the best. But why do you think that's happening?
I don't know. I don't know, because this is why I said I think this is a difference between a cursed car and a haunted car.
Right.
This is clearly like a cursed fucking car.
Yeah, definitely more of a cursed situation rather than a haunting, for damn sure. But I'm scared either way.
One of the most famous cursed cars in America was the one owned by late actor James Dean.
Oh, yeah.
The car in question was a Porsche 550 Spider, and it apparently had been given the nickname Little Bastard. Anyone with knowledge of film history knows that in the 1950s, James Dean was one of the biggest stars around, having starred in such classics as Rebel Without a Cause, Giant, and East of Eden. Dean was a big-time racing enthusiast, and he purchased the Spider while filming East of Eden. Keep in mind, the Porsche 550 Spider, only 90 of them were actually ever made, so this was a rare special car. Dean would have the car customized by one George Barris, the man who later designed the original Batmobile for the 1960s Batman TV show.
Oh, very cool.
James Dean showed off his new car to actor Alec Guinness. Alec Guinness, many will know, played Obi-Wan in the original Star Wars trilogy.
Whoa.
Alec Guinness immediately felt weird about this car, saying it felt sinister. Legend even has it that Alec Guinness told Dean, if you get in that Porsche, you will be dead next week.
Oh.
Unfortunately, he was right. Exactly a week later, on September 30th, 1955, James Dean was scheduled to participate in a race being held in Salinas, California. His mechanic, a man named Rolf Wolfthrick, told Dean that he should break in the car first by driving it from Los Angeles to Salinas. Both men decided to make the journey together. The two had actually been pulled over once along the way for speeding and getting ticketed for it. The two men had continued driving when all of a sudden a Ford Tudor made a turn out of nowhere into an intersection, and James Dean was unable to stop in time. They hit the Ford practically head-on. The driver of the Ford actually only had minor injuries, and Rolf was thrown from the vehicle, getting numerous injuries, including a broken jaw. But James Dean got the worst of it. His injuries were very, very bad and included a broken neck. He barely had a pulse when he was pulled from the wreckage, and he was pronounced dead on arrival at Paso Robles War Memorial Hospital. James Dean's friend, George Barris, the one who helped him customize it, was given ownership of the wreckage. Even while wrecked, the thing was dangerous. Apparently, while the mechanic was underneath it working on it, it fell, breaking both his legs.
Oh my God.
What was left of the car was then broken up and sold for parts. The engine went to a doctor in California named William Esrich, and the drivetrain went to another doctor named Dr. McHenry. Esrich installed the engine into the chassis of a Lotus, and while racing it one day in Pomona, California, he lost control and the car flipped over, leaving him with serious injuries. Dr. McHenry was not left unscathed either. In that very same race, on that very same day, both these doctors happened to be racing in this same race, each one with a part from James Dean's original car.
Yeah, what the fuck?
Dr. McHenry's engine in his car inexplicably stalled, causing him to lose control and crash into a tree, killing him.
Wow.
It was after this awful day that the legend of James Dean's cursed car began to grow, and many other stories started to pop up. Some probably more true than others, but according to one of these tales, it's said that a thief that day badly cut his hands when trying to steal the steering wheel from the wreckage. And another story says that 2 of the tires were sold off, and the unfortunate owner suffered a double blowout of both tires, causing them to crash. George Barris donated the wreckage to the California Highway Patrol so that they could display it as a warning of what could happen if you drive recklessly. It's said that within just a few days of going on display, a major fire broke out, destroying every car in the facility, but James Dean's Porsche was untouched.
Yeah, I see that. I'm not surprised by that.
So, they decided to transfer the wreckage to be displayed at a local high school, once again to serve as a deterrent to reckless driving. While being towed over to the high school, the car broke free from its restraints, causing a deadly accident.
Oh no.
It would later break a person's hip when it was being displayed in Sacramento when it became unrestrained again. And once again, as the car was being transported by a truck by a man named George Barks, he was involved in an accident that threw him from his truck. As he laid on the pavement, injured and in pain, the Porsche once again became unrestrained, falling on top of him, killing him.
Yikes.
In 1960, the Porsche was being transported to Los Angeles after being on display at a safety exhibit in Miami, Florida. Somewhere along the way, the car disappeared from the truck that was towing it, and to this day, no one knows where that car is.
I hate to say it, but I think maybe we're better off not knowing where that car is. You know, it's like someone either stole it and they're dealing with that shit, or it like ran the fuck away. You know,
right.
Who knows? I will say, like, I get what they're saying, where it's like using this car to see how bad it was, and then especially it being James Dean's car, so that makes it even more. I like get that, so it's like more impactful and everything. But I find that isn't like such bad taste to me.
Yeah, for sure.
To be like showcasing around the car that someone died in. I don't know, it just is wild to me. But another little tidbit, there is a auto body shop right by my mom's house. I drive by it whenever I go there, and it's called like James Dean Auto, or like James Dean tires or something.
Wow.
And it makes you think maybe pick any other person any other celebrity to be kind of your theme
Yeah.
for your car business. But I mean, literally, what do I know?
Absolutely.
I could be wrong as fuck.
And folks, there are many, many more stories. In fact, I had more, but I'm going to save them because
Dylan, oh my God.
there's some very creepy ass ones I'm going to save for Cursed Cars 2, Jesus Take the Wheel. That's what it's going to be called. I'm calling it right
Oh, I really like that.
now. And I won't make you wait long. We'll do it soon. We'll do it in the next few months.
Yeah, because we're having fun.
Maureen, I got a list of names I wouldn't mind going for a cruise with.
Oh, talk to me.
Folks, give it on up for our top tier Patreon subscribers and stick around to the end for our newest member. Of course, the Dream James Watkins, the Finnish Face Via Lundqvist, the Madman Marcus Hall, the Vivacious Vicky McHugh, the Tenacious Teresa Hackworth, the Heartbreak Kid Chris Hackworth, the oh-so-suave Sean Richardson, the British Bonebreaker Bex Martin, the Notorious Nicholas Barker, the Terrifying Taylor Lashmet, the Count of Cool Cameron Corliss, the Archduke of Attitude Adam Archer, the Sinister Sam Kiker, the Nightmare of New Zealand Noeline Vivilli, the Loathsome Johnny Love, the Carnivorous Kevin Bogey, the Killer Stud Carl Staub, the Firestarter Heather Carter, the Conqueror Christopher Damian Damaris, the Awfully Awesome Annie, the Murderous Maggie Leach, the Serve Sexy Sam Hackworth, the Evil Elizabeth Riley, Lauren Hellfire Hernandez Lopez, the Maniacal Laura Maynard, the Vicious Karen Van Buren, the Arch Nemesis Aaron Bird, the Sadistic Sergio Castillo, the Rapscallion Ryan Crum, the Beast Benjamin Huang, the Devilish Chris Doucette, the Psycho Sam, the Electric Emily Zhang, the Renegade Corey Ramos, the Crazed Carlos, the Antagonist Andrew Park, the Monstrous Michaela Schur, the Witchy Wonder J.P. Weimer, the Freaky Ben Forsyth, the Barbaric Andrew Barry, and the newcomer, the mysterious Marcella Schonk.
Oh my goodness, Marcella. Wow. We are so happy to have you, and thank you so much for joining us and for believing in us, and we believe in you, and just thank you so much. We are so grateful for all of you, and oh my gosh, a special shout out to the top tier, of course, but honestly, all the tiers and everyone that's not even on a tier. We love you so much, and thanks for listening to another fun episode.
Citizens of the Milky Way, my name is Dylan Hackworth.
I'm Maureen Bogey.
Good night and goodbye.
Goodbye.